Hello, I'm David Matthews with Spark of Life. The heartbeat of Spark of Life is to walk beside those who are grieving horrific losses. And I know that you're watching this trying to find some help to get out of that pit of grief. Well, this is the second of a series called How to Get Out of the Pit of Grief. And under the general heading of I've got to change my brain box. And in our number one video that we just released before this one, if you haven't watched that one, go back and watch that one and then come back and watch this one. But this is your brain box. This is an exquisite piece of art, isn't it? And your brain box, it has negatives in it and positives in it. Those negatives are things that are not true, but I've believed them for a long time. And every loss I have, and actually every experience I have, is filtered through that brain box. And if I don't get rid of some of those negatives, a lot of those negatives, it will lead to frustration, isolation, loneliness, even anger and confusion. And the very big one it will lead to is I will tend to give up my thoughts of, or my dream of ever getting out of that pit of grief. And I want you to see something else here. And this is number 2, and how to get out of that pit of grief by changing your brain box. And the first thing we have to change is that I can get out of jail whether I feel like it or not. And if you look at this guy in jail, this person in jail, all he has to do is let go of the bars and walk out into the present. But for some reason, he or she is holding onto the bars. And we've labeled that bar on the left, as you look at it, the past, and that bar on the right, the future. Why isn't this person letting go of the bars and getting out of jail? Well, first of all, they got to believe they can do it. Do they realize that if they can let go of those bars and they can walk right out of that jail into what we would call living forward? Our mission at Spark of Life is to help you live forward after loss, living forward with purpose and hope and meaning and, even joy again. So this is number 2 of change that brain box. The first thing we got to change is I got to believe I can get out of jail. The second part of this is what this video is about. And I've got to deal with the past and the future and stop holding on to the past and holding on to the future and step out into the present. And somebody has said life is always lived better when we live it today. I have another podcast about living for today. And the only thing I can do is the next right thing. And I got to knock over that first 2-inch domino. And that's a podcast called Domino Day. And it has to do with that. Why are people stuck in the pit of grief? Remember this, that when we experience loss, and it could be 30 years ago or yesterday, we have to go to the pit of grief because grief is the normal and natural response and reaction to loss of any kind. We got to give ourselves permission to grieve, but we also have to give ourselves permission to climb out of that pit of grief with my pain and to live forward with purpose and meaning. Now, what do most people do when they think of the past? Well, if you're like me, I think of all the stuff that people have done to me that has hurt me, and I tend to think of the things I've done that's hurt others, or my failures, my sins, the stuff I've screwed up in. So I have what we label regrets and resentments of the past. So this person in jail is holding onto that bar, and the reason he's not getting out of jail is he's holding on to those past resentments and regrets. I'll never forget the father who told us at a retreat that he would never get better, he could never recover, he could never live forward, and he was destined to live a life of mediocrity and really sadness because his son had taken his life by suicide. The father, by Sunday at the retreat, had admitted that those 3 days changed his life, that he now had hope to let go of those bars. And the bar he was hanging on to was resentment against his son for taking his life. And he had never admitted it because he loved his son. And he doesn't want to think of bad things about the son. But you see, if I have those resentments in here, for example, if my child died because he didn't wear a seatbelt or she didn't wear a seatbelt and she got in a car accident, I might not ever express my resentments toward the child for not doing that. That doesn't dishonor them. It's not something bad to do to think of that because those feelings are in there. So I got to let go of the resentments. But first, I've got to admit I have them. And with a loved one who's died, it's really difficult to admit the resentments. If your loss is a betrayal and your spouse left you for another person, you will definitely have to battle resentments because you've been treated unfairly, right? So you have to let go. You'll admit you might have resentments, but you have to let go of that somehow. And so the past has to be dealt with. And the thing that's keeping me in the pit of grief, we said this in video number 1 of this season. It's not the loss that keeps me in the pit. The loss propels me to the pit, but doesn't keep me there. It's those resentments and regrets of the past. So I might have regret because I didn't call the loved one enough. I didn't notice there were suicide signs. For example, if you've lost a loved one to suicide. And so I have deep regret. I wish I'd have done something different. I wish I could go back and change things. And so sometimes I'm so wrapped up in that, I'm holding on to that bar of the past, and so I remain stuck in jail. So I got to let go of that bar. I got to let go of it. And the future, this person's holding on to the future. What do you think about with the future? Well, we had a woman come to retreat that lost her husband of 56 years, and she came, and her first statement was, I've lost my purpose for living. I don't know how to live without my husband. She was so afraid of walking that path without him. They had walked together for 56 years. So she thought she couldn't get out of the pit of grief. By Sunday, she said, I have new purpose in living. I found a reason to live. I've got to help other people. And yes, I'll always miss my husband. And I have this gigantic hole in my heart, but I can get up and live forward with hope when I change my brain box. Now, I want you to look at this right here. It's another artwork by David Q. My middle name certainly isn't Q, but David Matthews. That's me. I did this. And this great artwork, this person's in the pit of grief. He's experienced or she's experienced loss. Okay, they want it. If they think about getting out of the pit, they're gripped with fear. So sometimes you could get out, but you don't, because maybe you have this brain box negative thing going on that I can't live without my loved one. I just can't do it. And so I hold on to those bars, and I'm afraid of the future. Does that describe you, where you are, anything like this? Well, what's keeping this person in the pit? The loss propelled this person to the pit, but those 3 green things you see on top of this person, they are actually boulders, and they weigh about 2 tons each. The first one is the brain box. That's what we're talking about in this series. We're going to have 5 more videos after this about the brain box negatives, the false things in my brain, that belief system needs to change to enable me to get out of the pit of grief and live forward with my loss. So what's keeping the person in the pit? It is not the loss. If the loss keeps you in the pit, you'll be in the pit forever. No, it's not the loss. So I changed that. What is it? I have to change my brain box, and those 2 other boulders up there are called resentments and regrets. That's what it's called. Those boulders are keeping the person in the pit. So how do I lighten the load on me? I have to change my thinking, change your brain box, get rid of the false, put in the positive, have other people live forward with hope and purpose and meaning and, yes, joy, after having experienced horrific losses. And the answer is yes, they have. How have they done it? They got rid of these boulders, and they chipped away at the boulders and made the load lighter. Now they're going to carry their pain, and you're going to carry the loss with you for the rest of your life, but it doesn't have to keep debilitating you. You can be set free, not from the pain. That pain will be there. You can cry and be in a healthy recovery and cry. But you're not debilitated. You're functioning now better. That's getting out of the pit of grief, but I got to do something with those 2 boulders of resentments and regrets. I got to let go of the bars of the past and the fear of the future, and I need to step forward into the present and live today dealing with my resentments and regrets. How do you do that? Well, that's where Spark of Life comes in. We've got our virtual retreats, and we've also got our virtual retreats that we're starting. Our first virtual retreat is in March. At those retreats, we'll have 10 to 15 people, and we'll do a Zoom conference, and we'll do everything we do in our in-person grief recovery retreats, and we'll help you get rid of the boulders, chip away at the brain box negatives, and then deal with your resentments and your regrets. And what we do at a retreat is just amazing, not because of us, but because it lightens our load and gives hope. So go online to sparkoflife.org and see about that virtual retreat. And then our in-person retreats start later in the year because of this COVID mess. But in the meantime, you need help now. You can also, or you could take an online course that has all these principles in it on how to get rid of those boulders that are holding me down and keeping me from living a fulfilled life. I know you can do that. So go to sparkoflife.org, and there you will learn how to start chipping away at those top two boulders of resentments and regrets after you lose a loved one or any other loss. And see, we're chipping away at that brain box boulder right now. You don't have to stay in the pit to honor your loved one. You don't have to deal with all your guilt and keep your guilt on you, so that stops you from progressing out of the pit of grief. And when you feel lighter, when those boulders start to be chipped away, you'll be amazed at what you can do. The father who said he could never live a happy life again, and this was about 1.5 years ago, that was Thursday night at the retreat. On Sunday, he hugged me, he hugged my wife, he hugged the other participants. You know what he told me? He said, David, I can live forward. I know I have hope now to live forward with the pain I feel for losing my son. At Spark of Life, we found there's always hope. We've worked with thousands and thousands of those who are devastated by loss, and they found a way to start getting out of that pit of grief and breathing the fresh air of hope and meaning and purpose to their life, to release them to go and love the people they have on this earth. At Spark of Life, there's always hope. Go to our YouTube channel. Check us out on our YouTube channel. Like this video. Subscribe to our channel. Tell others about Spark, and go to sparkoflife.org, where there's always hope. Always hope.